In our first video, we explored resistance, inductive reactance, and capacitive reactance, and built the idea of impedance from the ground up. In the second video, we learned how to calculate current magnitude and phase shift in a simple RLC circuit, where everything is connected in series using polar diagrams. That approach works great for simple circuits, but real-world circuits aren't always that neat. Components are often connected in a mix of series and parallel, and that's where things start to get tricky. Those same equations quickly become hard to manage. And that's exactly where complex numbers come into play. So before we start using them, let's first understand why we need them with a simple example.
Here we have two loads. Load A is made of a resistor and a capacitor connected in series. Load B is made of a resistor and an inductor connected in series. Now, let's connect each load to the same AC power source and calculate the current in each case. Let's start with load A. We'll follow the usual path. First, calculate the impedance, then use it to find the peak current and the phase shift. After working through the calculation, we get a peak current of 84.9 milliamps with a phase shift of 45 degrees. So the voltage and current waveforms would look like this. For a simple circuit like this, these equations work really well. We derived these equations from scratch in the previous video, so if impedance and phase angle still feel a bit unclear, I recommend watching that first. Now let's move on to load B. Again, we solve the equations step by step. First finding the impedance, then using that to calculate the peak current and phase shift. After working through the calculation, we get a peak current of 48 milliamps with a phase shift of minus 53.13 degrees. So if we plot the voltage and current, the graph looks like this. For simple circuits, where all the components are connected in series, these fundamental equations make it fairly straightforward to calculate the current magnitude and phase. But when we move to more complex circuits, these basic equations are no longer the most efficient way to solve the problem. Now let's say we want to power both loads at the same time. We can connect them to the same AC source in parallel, like this. So what will the total current be? Earlier, we already calculated the current in each branch. So in theory, the total current is simple. Current C equals current A plus current B. But there's a catch. These are AC currents, so they are sinusoidal waves with different phase angles. If we try to add those sine wave equations directly, the math gets messy very quickly. We would need to break each waveform into sine and cosine parts, add the matching parts together, and then rebuild the result into one new sine wave with its own amplitude and phase. That method is correct, but it takes a lot of steps, and the more branches we add, the easier it is to make mistakes. That's why we usually move to a more visual approach, phasor diagrams. As we explained earlier, AC voltages and currents can be represented as rotating vectors. For now, let's focus only on the current vectors. Each sinusoidal current can be shown as a phasor. The length of the phasor represents the current amplitude, and the angle represents its phase shift. So to find the total current, we add the current phasors as vectors. This gives us a much clearer picture of what's happening. We can actually see how currents with different phase angles combine. But there's still a problem. For accurate calculations, we either need to draw the vectors very carefully or split each one into horizontal and vertical components. That works for a few phasors, but as the circuit gets larger, it becomes slow, messy, and impractical. But here's the good news. We already have a mathematical tool that handles phasors perfectly: complex numbers. Complex numbers let us represent these rotating vectors in an algebraic way. So instead of dealing with trigonometry or drawing diagrams, we can work with simple equations. And because the math behind complex numbers is already well established, it allows engineers to turn complicated circuit problems into much simpler algebra problems. As you'll see, once we start using complex numbers, these calculations become much more straightforward and a lot more systematic.
Complex numbers have two parts, a real part and an imaginary part. The imaginary unit is written as I, and it represents the square root of -1. We can visualize complex numbers on a simple xy plane. The horizontal axis is the real axis, and the vertical axis is the imaginary axis. Consider the complex number z equals 4 plus 3i. We can plot this point on the Argand plane like this. The distance from the origin to that point is called the modulus, basically the magnitude of the complex number. Using Pythagoras' theorem, that distance comes out to 5. We can also calculate the angle it makes with the positive real axis. So a complex number can be described in two ways, either by its horizontal and vertical components or by its magnitude and angle.
And that should sound familiar, because in AC circuits, current can also be described in exactly the same way, by its magnitude and its phase, using a polar form. And this is where things start to get powerful. We can map these electrical quantities directly onto the complex plane. That means currents, voltages, and impedance can all be treated just like complex numbers. And once we do that, we can use the same math, simple addition and algebra, to combine them instead of struggling with trigonometry. Let's look at an example to see how this makes things much easier.
But before we do that, there's one small convention to keep in mind. In electrical engineering, we use J for the imaginary unit instead of I, because I is already commonly used to represent current. So with that in mind, let's move forward.
Here again, let's solve our first circuit using complex numbers. First, we represent the impedance in complex form. Resistance goes on the real axis, and reactance goes on the imaginary axis. So the impedance becomes Z equals 100 minus J100 ohms. Now we apply Ohm's law, but in complex form. Instead of just dividing magnitudes, we divide complex numbers. So current equals voltage divided by impedance. And the result we get is a complex current. If we plot this complex current on the plane, it would look like this. From that single value, we can easily find both the magnitude and the phase angle. And here's the best part. We don't actually need to draw the diagram every time. The math gives us everything directly. And once you get used to it, it becomes surprisingly simple. Now let's move on to the second circuit. Here, the process is exactly the same. First, write the impedance in complex form. You can plot it on the complex plane if that helps you visualize it. Then, use Ohm's law in complex form to calculate the current. Once we have the complex current, we can easily find its magnitude and phase angle. So once the idea clicks, it's really not that hard. Now let's return to the third circuit, the one that was difficult to solve using trigonometry. This time, we'll start from the beginning. For branch A, we calculate the current in complex form. For branch B, we do the same. Now that both branch currents are written as complex numbers, we can simply add them to find the total current. And compared to adding sinusoidal equations, complex number addition is much easier. We just add the real parts together, then add the imaginary parts together. Once we have the total complex current, we can calculate its magnitude and phase angle separately. And that's the real power of complex numbers. They turn messy AC circuit math into simple, organized algebra. Finally, let's compare the two ways of calculating current in AC circuits. First, we have the trigonometric method. Here, we start by calculating the angular frequency. Then, we calculate the current in each branch separately. For load A, we first find the capacitive reactance. then the total reactance, then the impedance. After that, we calculate the current magnitude and phase shift, and finally write the current equation. For load B, we follow the same process. First the inductive reactance, then the total reactance, then the impedance, and finally the current magnitude and phase shift. Now, let's compare that with the complex number method. For load A, we can write the branch impedance directly as a complex number. Then we use Ohm's law in complex form to find the current. For load B, the process is exactly the same. Write the impedance as a complex number, then calculate the current. Much more straightforward. But we're not done yet. We still need to add the two branch currents to find the total current. With the trigonometric method, this addition becomes very heavy. There are many steps, and it's easy to make mistakes. But with the complex number method, we simply add two complex numbers. Then we calculate the final magnitude and phase angle. So you can see how much easier current calculations become when we use complex numbers. And this is something many students miss. Complex numbers in electrical engineering are not some kind of black magic. We use them because they make the mathematics cleaner, faster, and easier to manage.
And that brings us to the end of this video. If you found this helpful and you want to see more videos like this, explained step by step from the ground up, you can support this project on Patreon and be part of the journey as we build it together. Your support really helps keep this kind of content going. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might find it useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.